Hi there, and welcome to this parenting tip on teaching your teen to handle anger, even if you've struggled with anger yourself. My name is Karen Wagner, and I'm the founder of Teaching Our Youth and the Parenting Blueprint, a plan to parent by design. And personally, I have experienced interacting with an angry teen, and I will be honest, I didn't always handle it effectively. So what I want to do is share with you what I have learned and how you can transform your communication with your angry teen. Two of the most important relationship skills a teen can learn is how to express anger and how to express love. Now, if your teen is feeling loved, then he has a much better opportunity of learning to handle anger in a positive way. However, if your teen's love tank is empty and they are feeling criticized and misunderstood, they're most certainly going to handle anger purely. Positive anger management is a relationship skill that must be learned. So, truly, how do you get your teenager to talk to them about their anger? I mean, when some kids get mad, they just clam up. And then we say, what is wrong? And they refuse to talk. And I don't know how I'm going to help you if you don't talk to me about it, right? We've been there. We've been there. And then another parent may have the complete opposite problem. When their teen gets angry, everybody knows about it. They go ballistic. They scream, they yell, they jump up and down, they act like a 2-year-old having a tantrum. And honestly, I truly believe that when teens go through adolescence, it's kind of like going through toddlerhood all over again, just in bigger bodies, right? So in reality, most teens are going to lead towards one or two disruptive approaches to anger. And that is either implosive or explosive. Now, we use the word implosive for the silent teens because the anger is held inside and it truly goes unprocessed, and it eats away at the inner spirit of the child. Remember, anger is usually stimulated when the teen perceives that we, the parent, or someone else has done them wrong, right? And this sense of being wronged, if it is not processed with us or the other individual who hurt them, this often leads to feelings of resentment, loneliness, isolation, and ultimately depression. Implosive anger can also lead to passive aggressive behavior. Now, the teen tends to be a little bit more passive on the outside. They refuse to deal with the anger, but they express a growing resentment by becoming involved in behaviors that are sure to upset us, the person they're angry with, or even themselves. Now, passive aggressive behavior can usually involve, let's say, a loss of interest in school or in sports that they had loved before. Maybe they turn to some drug abuse or they become sexually active. Now, all of these are aggressive expressions of anger towards the parent. And sometimes after months of depression, these teens who have held this inside for a long time often erupt in violent behavior. On the other hand, some teens have explosive patterns of anger. When we say or do something that they perceive to be wrong, they usually respond with loud, harsh, sometimes cursing words and expressing their displeasure of what we have done or what we failed to do. Some kids will throw things at us, or they'll drop our dishes, or they'll run your lawnmower over your water hose, or anything that could even be physically destructive in ways to exhibit their anger. Now, honestly, if these destructive patterns are not changed, these are the same teens that in a few years will become verbally and physically abusive to their spouse and their children. So teaching teens proper anger management is a serious task. So the first step is recognizing the patterns that exist in your teen. You're not likely to lead them to patterns of anger management until you first identify what they are. Are they implosive, internally processing with dangerous patterns on the side, or are they explosive? Now, once you've identified your child's method of dealing with anger, we need to take the next step of helping them learn healthy skills in anger management. Now, this second step is the hard work of listening to our angry teens. Now, I'm going to stress how hard this is because this is not easy. Let's begin by listening to the explosive teenager. Now, as a parent coach, I'm trained to listen. But I'm telling you, it is not easy to listen to my kid expressing their anger and saying the harsh things that they say coming out of their mouths. It was hurtful. But I'm truly convinced that the only way to have a positive influence on angry teens is to hear their concerns, no matter how harshly they are delivered. Because the anger cannot be processed unless the concerns of the anger are addressed. So, in other words, we can't address the concerns unless we hear them. So, why are they so angry with us, right? Usually because something happened that they perceive to be unfair or stupid, right? That's what they'll say. This is stupid. Granted, their perception may be a little distorted, but in their mind, a wrong has been committed. Now, when a teen who is angry is expressing anger verbally, even when they're yelling, honestly, we need to be thankful. Because if we will listen, there's a good chance we're going to learn what's going on in their mind. And this information is so important if we're going to be able to help them process the anger. If we don't listen, we will never uncover information that we need to resolve the matter. And their anger is going to continue to be stored inside. The explosive words that they said are going to be spoken in vain. Why? Because nothing happened. Nothing was resolved. Now, on the other hand, if we hear their concerns, we can get to the root of the issue, and then we can start an intelligent conversation. But most of us respond negatively before we even get to their concerns. I did this. We say things like, shut up and go to your room, or you're not going to talk to me like that. Who do you think you're talking to? And in doing so, I've done this. In doing so, we have just stopped the flow of communication and eliminated any possibility of discovering the source of the anger. Why? Because we shut them down. Now, sometimes, those of you who have worked with me before, I respond with, I'll listen when your voice is calm as mine, or I love you too much to argue. This is when we are dealing with the little nitpicky things of the day. But if you have a child who is really dealing with anger, and I'm going to say on the verge of rage, this is not the process we want to use in shutting them down to neutralize the arguing. We need to be able to get them out. If we're not listening to them, we'll never get to the root. Now, sometimes they may get quiet, but the anger is still brewing inside of them. And that anger is not going to go anywhere until it is processed. This is what I call stuffing it, right? And some of us may experience that because we do it too. We stuff it. So what happens is we just keep pushing it down and we keep pushing it down. And it's kind of like double anger, right? First of all, we're angry about the original concern, but then we also get angry about the way we're treated because we're not allowed to express how we feel. So we need to focus on what the teen is saying, not necessarily the manner in which they're saying it. Are you with me? If they're yelling at you, they're trying to tell you something. So we need to shift into listening mode, all right? And this is something else that you might want to consider. Grab a piece of paper and a pen. Just grab a piece of paper and begin to take notes on what you hear them saying, just little comments that you're picking up on. Because sometimes we get so caught up in what they're saying and the way they're saying it that we're still not hearing them. So this will help you direct your attention to the message delivered rather than the manner in which it's being delivered. So write down what you think you've heard them saying. What do they believe to be so unfair? And don't defend yourself. Don't defend yourself. This is not the time to fight. This is the time to do what? Step 2 is listening. Negotiation or fighting, will come later. But now we're just gathering information, which is absolutely necessary in order to reach an agreement with our team. So let's continue to move on to round 2 because we're listening. So share with them, after you've listened, share with them what you think you heard them say. So you might say back to them, and this is called drive-through listening, and you've probably heard this technique before. What I think I hear you saying is that you are angry because fill in the blank. Is that what you're saying? Let me say that again. What I think I hear you saying is that you're angry because, is that what you're saying? In an empathetic tone. This indicates that you are listening and that you want to hear more. They are most likely going to respond to you, probably with the same intensity. Yes, that's what I'm saying. You're not listening to me. Whatever it is, the same intensity, or maybe it'll be a little bit reduced because they got the big explosion out. It could be a little bit varied. Okay, maybe a little bit reduced, but they will continue to share with you why they're upset. continue to write down what you hear they're saying and refuse the temptation to defend yourself. Look, I know the first thing I wanted to do was jump in and shut it down, but I was never going to get to the root. So remember, we are in listening mode. So when the teen subsides on round 2, okay, we've listened once and then we said, so what I hear you saying, is that correct? Do it again. They're going to come back at you and do the same thing again. So what I hear you saying is you're angry because of this. Fill in the blank. Is that correct? So when that subsides and you repeat what you hear them saying again, it's another opportunity to make sure you're getting the full message. But after the 3rd round of this, you're doing this 3 times. 3 times, okay? They're going to explode on you. You're going to respond back with the drive-through listening. What I hear you saying is that you're angry because of this. After the 3rd round, they're probably going to sense that you're taking them seriously. They might even be a little bit shocked that you've been taking notes, of what they're saying. I can't overemphasize the importance of listening to your teen when they're angry. So that's dealing with an explosive teen, right? So how do you deal with the teen when they're silent, right? How many of you may have a silent teen? My kids kind of wavered back and forth. You know it's brewing, but they don't bring it out, okay? In some ways, dealing with the silent teen is more difficult to help because you know what? They're not talking to you. They're not willing to share what they're angry about. And you know what? That's when I felt powerless. Like I couldn't, look, I'm a problem solver. How can I solve the problem if I don't know what the problem is? So we can't respond to what's going on inside the teen's mind until we've learned what their thoughts and feelings are. And in many cases, this is why they're using the silent treatment. When we are extremely controlling of our teens' lives, and sometimes we do that because we have fear of the risk that they're taking or some of their behaviors are so risky, right? When we become a little bit more controlling of the teen's life, making all the decisions for them, they start to feel powerless. They are unable to develop independence, self-identity, and feel that silence is the only way to get the upper hand with us. So with silence, they're in control, at least for the moment. They have something we want, information, talk to me, and they're refusing to give it to us. How many of you experience that, right? How many of you experience that? So we tried to explain to them, I can't help you if you don't tell me what's going on. I've done that. But in reality, that's precisely what they want. They want to be in control. They're tired of our control and they want to be independent. And in the moment of silence, that's the only way they can establish it. So parents of silent teens, you need to ask some hard questions, okay? Am I giving them enough freedom to think and make decisions on their own? Am I allowing my teenager to be a teen, or am I still treating them like a child? And for an overly controlling parent, the best approach is the following message. Jot this down if you want. I know sometimes I get too involved in your life, and I know you're getting older, and you may not want to share all of your thoughts and feelings with me, and that's all right. But when you want to talk, I want you to know that I'm available and I'm willing to listen when you're ready. So what you're doing is you're just kind of humbling yourself to your child. Because we may have had some behaviors that probably have shut them down, or we were overly controlling, we need to go back and do what? So we need to repair and restore. Now, another reason why some teens choose silence when they're angry is that they've learned from experience that when they share they're angry, we explode, right? We become the fuel in the fire. I've talked about that. And they get tired of the explosions, right? So they choose to be silent rather than face our anger and our words. They just don't want to deal with it. So they don't want to go through it. So they just clam up and they refuse to, show their anger. They're just going to shut down. So parents of teens like this will never be able to drag words out. Okay. And anything we do is considered nagging or interrogation. Anybody get the interrogation? Why are you interrogating me? I used to get that one. And it's all that's going to do is push that teen further into silence. Those of you know I share a lot of stories about Kyle, and Kyle has got the dominant and cautious blend. The dominant blend is very outgoing, and they're going to tell you how they feel. But then there were times when Kyle went to that cautious mode, which is much more reserved, and he wasn't talking about anything. And I would push him and push him and push him until I got the explosion. Now, when I got the explosion, I at least was able to get some stuff, but it was a vicious, vicious cycle. It was a vicious cycle. And so we really needed to go through this process of listening, the drive-through listening, me listening, what I think I hear you saying. So if we're not able to drag the words out, this is, and they don't want to talk about it. And we continue to nag them, because I did that. Kyle would go into his cave. I said he'd go into the cave. And then I went into the cave after him, and he just went deeper into the cave. And so I just had to drop it until we were able to build that relationships of trust, that then he was able to talk to me again. So what we need to do is confess our own failures. We need to humbly go to our kids and confess our own failures. Tearing down the walls of the negative behavior is the first step in creating an atmosphere where they will be able to start to share their feelings and emotions again. So here's another suggestion of how you might want to approach this. Let me role play this with you. I would say, hey, Kyle, you got a couple minutes? I could share something with you that's really important to me. I mean, if it's not a good time, I'd be willing to wait. So what I did is I asked permission. And those of you who are coaching with me, you know that I talk about asking permission. If you ask permission and they say, okay, they are willing to receive. If we don't ask permission and we push, the wall is up. The wall is up. It makes all the difference. Hey, you got a couple minutes? I could share something with you that's really important. And if it's not a good time, I'm willing to wait. So you're giving them an out. Once he gave me permission, I could continue. So I was doing some thinking the other night, and I realized, that I really haven't been fair to you in the past. When you've come to me with your concerns, I've often been insensitive. I cut you off. I remember a few times when I told you need to grow up and stop yelling at me. And I realize now that you were the one who was acting more mature when you wanted to share your concerns with me, and I shut you down. And I'm sorry about the way I made you feel. I want you to know that when you're angry with me in the future, that I want to listen. I want to hear your concerns. I want to respond in a positive way. I'm certain this is probably going to happen again, but if you tell me why you're upset, I want to listen to you. I want to respect your feelings so we can deal with it, whatever it is. Is that okay? So that is kind of just a scenario of what we can do when we want to humble ourselves and admit our past failures of the way we may have dealt with it in the past. When they realize that it's safe to share the anger with us, they will. But when they feel threatened, intimidated, put down, shamed, not treated fairly, whatever it is, they're going to choose the route of silence and withdrawing. The goal with our silent team is to create that atmosphere where they feel free to share their anger. And when they begin to talk again, we got to go back to step 2, that hard part of listening, just like I discussed before. So we have already identified explosive, implosive. Okay. And so we are looking at the strategies of the listening cycle. Listening, tell me what I think I heard. Listening, tell them what you think you heard. Listening, tell them what you think you heard. 3 times we're going to do that round. 3 times we want to do that. So now let's go to step 3. After you've identified the method of anger and we've listened, the next step is to affirm the validity of their anger. Now, I know some of you are thinking like, wait a minute. I don't think they should have been angry at all. I just think they misunderstood me, right? Sometimes they don't even have their facts straight on the story. Have we been there? How can I affirm the anger when I don't necessarily agree with their perception? But I totally get it. This is where we make most of our mistakes. We confuse facts with feelings, okay? We confuse the facts with feelings. The result is that we get into arguments with our team about the facts and we ignore the feelings. Ignoring feelings does not build a positive relationship in any relationship, whether it's with your children or with your spouse or even with friends. Ignoring feelings does not build a positive relationship. This is why step 3 is so important. If you don't understand how to affirm the anger with your kid, you are never going to teach them how to handle anger positively. Because what we're doing in this process is modeling to them how to handle anger in the future. Are you with me? So granted, the perception of the situation may not be correct, but if you don't affirm their right to be angry, then you're not likely to open up to the facts the way we see them. So it's the affirmation to the right to be angry that creates the emotional climate where you can hear their perception. So one of the best ways to generally affirm another person's emotion is called empathy. Now, I'll be honest with you. Some of you know my story and you've worked with me for a while. Empathy was not in my DNA, okay? I am driven. It's my way. I'm not going to tell you my way. So I had a lot of changing to do when it comes to applying these skills. So empathy is putting yourself in their shoes and trying to see the world through their lens. I mean, we talk about this in Parent by Design. This is what the whole parenting blueprint is all about, seeing life through a different lens. So for us, the parent, it means we need to become the teenager for that moment. Remembering our insecurities, our moods, the desire we had for independence and our self-identity, and the importance of being accepted by our peers, and the desperate need for love and understanding from our parents through that time in our life. And a parent who does not seek to have empathy with their teen is going to have a real difficult time affirming their teen's feeling of anger. So when you do that, share your understanding of your feelings. I get it. I would have felt the same way, you know. Just affirm that in an empathetic tone. Or maybe you can share an experience that you had or how you would feel if that happened to you as a teen. Empathy. So now we get to explain our perception and seek the resolution. So when the teen has been thoroughly heard, they receive empathy regarding the anger and their feelings. We can more readily take that final step in processing the anger, explaining your perception, and seeking the resolution. So now we're ready to share our perception with our teen. And now if we do this before these first three steps, the results are going to be an extended argument. They typically end up with harsh words, and we start that cycle all over again. So there is a process to this. You have carefully listened. You've affirmed their anger. Then the teen is willing to listen to your perception. They may not agree with us, but at least they will hear us. And then we can get to a dialogue. But the thing is, we need to get the anger out. Our goal is to always work through their anger to the point of resolution. Because the unresolved anger in the heart and the minds of our kids is the worst thing that can happen. Because unresolved anger breeds feelings of bitterness, resentment. The teen feels rejected, unloved. Why? Because we're not listening to them. Their unresolved anger makes it impossible to receive love from us. So many parents I see are trying to connect with their kids, and all that's happening is they're getting met with the anger. And we need to let them get the anger out. We need to get to the root of what that anger is. And so many of parents are frustrated by the kids' refusal to accept our love that sometimes we try even harder, only to be pushed away even harder, right? So if we are going to successfully communicate love to our teens, we must first seek to deal with the unresolved anger. And if the anger returns over a period of time, we have to create that climate where they feel free to share what they're angry about. Repeat that cycle. Acknowledge past failures may be part of creating this environment. I had to do that. You might say something like this, I realized in the past, I didn't always listen to you when you were angry. And sometimes I even said hurtful and critical things, and I'm so sorry. I know that I have not been a perfect parent. And I really would like very much to deal with my own failures. If you would be willing, would we be able to talk some time about how I can honestly share with you, that I know I've hurt you. I know it's going to be hard for you and for me to do this, but I want you to know that I'm willing to listen, and I'm sorry. Conversations like this will open the door to possibilities of the teen revealing the stored anger and giving us a chance to process the issue. Teaching your teen to accept anger and process it in a positive way is one of the greatest contributions that you can make to their social, emotional, and spiritual lives. They will learn to process anger by experience. See, if we don't teach them how to process it, they'll continue to do what they're doing. So we start to help them process anger, even if it involves listening to their initial screams. Later, we can start teaching them better methods of communicating their anger, but we must never allow the teen's language to keep us from listening to their message. And I have to admit that I had done that in the past. And when I started transforming some of my interactions with my kids, that I was really able to get to the root, we had some amazing conversations. Then we can restore and heal and move on to a better relationship. Now, honestly, if this process does not resolve the issue for you, professional counseling may be required. If your teen is not willing to go for counseling, because sometimes that's difficult to get our teens to go for counseling, then maybe we need to go. Eventually, maybe they'll join us in the process. But I am truly a believer in the healing power of listening, especially when our teens are angry. So I hope you got some benefit from this particular tip. This is something that I just see cycling around with so many parents that I speak to and a lot of the parents that I'm working with. Our kids have not been taught these skills. We think they should know. And either we're modeling something that's not healthy and we need to get a hold of our own anger and go through this process. But if you are able to follow these 3 steps, identify if they're implode or explode, go through the 3 cycles of listening, okay? Then apply the empathy. Humble yourself to some of the past failures that you've had and let them know that you want to heal the relationship mistakes of the past. This is something that is going to be truly, truly powerful. These are some of the skills and strategies that I work with clients when it comes to our parenting blueprint. So if you would like to learn more about what it's like to put together a parenting blueprint and learn to parent by design, you can always book a real quick connect call with me, and we can discuss a little bit about where you are in your relationship with your teens, where you want to be, and let's see if I can help you get there. So I hope you enjoyed this parenting tip to restore and repair the relationships with your angry teens. You all have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Bye.